Welcome to Everyday Greatness, a nice little show proudly brought to you by major sponsor ARA Group, one of Australia's greatest supporters of community projects. Everyday Greatness is a show hosted by a real human being, talking to some real people about real human issues that will help make you feel proud again of simply being a good solid Joe bag of donuts. Here's your host, Barnaby Howarth.
Welcome to Everyday Greatness, and thanks for listening. I'm your host, Barnaby Howarth. This is a show designed to help people realise there is greatness in being an everyday Harry Sacker Rolls. The story of Greg Castle isn't a complex one, but it's inspiring in its simplicity. Greg is just a really good bloke who's given a lot of good things to the world over the years. So when adversity struck Greg's family and his wife Deb was diagnosed with breast cancer, he called on the community and they got around him like he's got around them so often. Greg started hosting a fundraising ball to raise money for the Breast Cancer Institute of New South Wales. He hoped a few people might turn up and it might raise a bit of cash. But it ended up being so much more. The Best Breast Ball was held 4 times while Deb came in and out of remission. Sadly, Deb had passed away before the last ball, but it's left a legacy that would make Deb and Greg both immensely proud. The ball raised over $300,000. 300 people attended the first ball. Then for each of the following 3, over 700 people attended each one. Greg's story gets a little more complex now. Before Deb passed, they had 2 young boys to raise, and Greg had a successful physiotherapy clinic to maintain. His story may have got more complex, but his strategy didn't. When Greg lost his wife, he had a long road ahead of him. But he knew that to get to the end of it, he just had to keep putting one foot in front of the other. Greg just did more of the simple things. He went out with friends for lunch, kept working hard at his business, respected the people around him, and kept a smile on his face the whole time. Greg used the accumulation of the small things in his life to build stores of resilience, and he's now a proud father, a successful businessman, and still a really good bloke. And Greg Castle joins me now on Everyday Greatness. Greg, thanks for joining us and welcome to Everyday Greatness.
Thank you, Barnaby.
So you were the head physiotherapist at the Pennant Hills Demons Aussie Rules Club, which is a melting pot for stupid nicknames. How did you get the nickname The Phantom?
Well, there was a club newsletter that used to come out periodically, and someone thought it was a good idea for me to have a little blog, a physio blog in there. And so I even thought you may have had something to do with it. And so the physio blog was called The Phantom Physio. And so I'd put in there a few, try to put together some words of wisdom for the guys. And the blog was called The Phantom Physio. And that's the story.
Footballers aren't smart people. So at Pennant Hills, did you strategically make friends with people there because you thought they might come in handy down the track? Or did you just hang out with them because they were really good people you enjoyed hanging out with?
Yeah, look, it just evolved because there were just so many great people at the club, and still are, that it was just infectious to feel part of it. I would go back to the club after games frequently for the presentation, and because I just enjoyed it. So I could have just headed off home, I guess, but I felt part of the club. They made me feel part of it, and so the friendships just grew over time, and that started way back in 2000, which was my first year at the club, and my tenure there finished in 2000, and I had 11 seasons there, and still maintain those friendships, today, and I'm sure some of those will endure for life.
I'm sure they will. With the advantage of hindsight as an everyday bloke, Did you think you had the resilience you needed to cope when your wife, Deb, was diagnosed with cancer?
Well, I think I had a pretty good resilience, to be honest, because I was just through my upbringing. I was one of 4 kids, and we were sort of taught or had to be independent from a pretty young age. And my parents were off a lot doing their own things and sports and what have you, and it was just something that we learnt. And there was obviously competition between you're one of 4, so that breeds a bit of resilience as well amongst your siblings. So I think that upbringing helped, plus along with my sporting upbringing and just reading a competitive nature, never give in. That's probably where the resilience came from.
So when Deb got sick, what made you decide to start hosting the Best Breast Ball?
Well, we went to a function that New South Wales Breast Cancer Institute held called the Best Breast Breakfast, which was an annual event. And we thought, look, let's, we're sort of in this breast cancer journey now. We'll go and we'll support this event. And it was wonderful. It was great to meet some other people who were involved in the management of breast cancer or had been affected by it, medical people that worked, with the institute. And from that, I had an idea that, well, maybe a night event, a ball, could be something that we could do. And I thought that would help the institute if we would get something out of it in terms it would be uplifting for Deb and myself. It would give us some positive focus. And so that's how it was born.
A lot of your different worlds came together for the ball. Your old friendships, your business world and your sporting world. Who were some of the more memorable acts from the Best Breast Ball?
Oh, without a doubt, a lady named Sissy, who back then when we first met her at the Best Breast Breakfast, she was 95 and she'd performed this tap dance that was just remarkable for someone that age. She'd been a dance and performer her whole life, and she wooed the crowd at the breakfast. And so we asked her if she would come to the first ball. We also used that night as a means by which we got her house repainted. We had people volunteer and what have you, and for that, and so she got that out of that. It was a great thing. But also the other acts that were memorable were the big band. So it was a 20-piece big band, so a big brass band, and they were classy. And we also had, of course, the rock sort of music side of it with Dave Faulkner from the Hoodoo Gurus and, of course, Doc Neeson from the Angels, and that was just phenomenal.
Dave Faulkner and Doc Neeson are some big names. How did you get them to sing at the ball? What strategy did you use to get them to say yes?
Well, Dave Faulkner was very good friends with a lifelong mate of mine, and so I, asked him to ask Forco, and he was able to do that, and convinced Forco it was a worthwhile cause. And in relation to Doc Neeson, well, he actually lived in Westmead for a while, where my clinic used to be, and he turned up at the clinic one day, with bad back pain, and I became his physio, and from there we became really great close friends. And so when I asked him, he was more than happy to do it.
Beautiful. So did you end up getting a bit overwhelmed by the success of the ball when you saw the amounts of money it was raising and the amount of people buying tickets?
I was really humbling because our goal for the first one was to try and raise $10,000. And we raised around $40,000, just over $40,000 at the first ball. I was I had a fear of failure, which of it, flopping, and so I thought $10,000 was not aiming too high, and we obviously went way over that, and it just really sort of took off from there.
And how much help did you get from the community around you in organising and running the ball?
Oh, a massive amount. It was. I didn't really have an organising committee as such. I was able to just spend a lot of late nights when Deb and the kids were in bed, just emailing various companies. Try to do as much as I can through personal contacts or personal affiliations, because that was just generally much more successful because there was a personal touch to it, and they were generally, had a lot more, chance of success of agreeing to, contribute in some way. And it was quite overwhelming how many people, how many companies were willing to donate gifts or prizes or events, to use to auction off and raise money for the event.
It sounds as though you were doing things as just a nice bloke, just asking people and hoping they'd say yes. What exactly did the community, the everyday people in the community, do around you to help you?
Well, look, more of that came after Deb had passed, to be honest. Some of it came prior. I can remember the Pennant Hills Footy Club having a working bee at my house. We had moved out of our family home into Deb's parents' home at Castle Hill. We moved there for the last 6 months of her life because it was just, we needed a bit more help, and her parents were able to provide that. They had a big house, the extra room, and Deb was being cared for there at home. I was still able to work even though I'd cut back. And so my place, or our house, had sort of gone to ruin, but there was certainly it was pretty well overgrown and needed some TLC. So they did a working bee there, and guys from the footy club came and helped out with that, which I'll never forget. It was extremely helpful. The footy club also came in large numbers to the ball and contributed there in a big way. And of course, after Deb had passed, they helped to, the ladies, the girlfriends and the wives, helped to organise the wake and food and some of the logistics with that, and just something I'll never forget.
When you look back on things around the time when Deb passed, how does it make you feel when you consider that when the chips were down for your family, further down than most chips go, that you stood up to be counted as a husband and father and put on this ball that would have made your wife so happy and given her so much positivity?
Well, it's something that I look back on and I'm really happy that we did it because, it's created a lot of lasting memories and made new friendships out of that. It's also something that I wanted the boys to be able to look back on in time, because they were only 3 and 7 when she was diagnosed. So when the balls were occurring, they were, well, by the time the last ball had happened, they were, so they were only, sort of another. Let me think. Actually, when the last ball was on, they were 3 and 7. Okay, so they were when she was diagnosed. Ryan was only 6 weeks old, and Jordan was 3. So the very last ball, they were 3 and 7, and so Jordan can remember that. Ryan can't, but there's videos, photos, and that's going to be wonderful for them, obviously, and. I'm just quite proud of what we did, and it was extremely uplifting for Deb each of those years, and that was really the number one thing the number one importance that to try and help her, because she looked forward to it so much.
And well, you should be proud, Phantom. Your struggles didn't stop though when you lost Deb, as you said, you had two young boys who were grieving because they just lost their mother. How did you manage helping them with their grief when you probably had so much to deal with yourself?
Well, it's a good question. It was really just battle your way through it as best you could. Kids' grief is very different to an adult's grief because my grief was really all-consuming and overwhelming, and it felt like it was a constant pressure that just enveloped you and never left. Whereas kids' grief would come and go, and it'd often be only there, quite fleetingly, because they possess this remarkable ability to be phenomenal copers. But part of that coping just comes through being kids. They're distracted easily. Their attention can just go to anything else really, really, really fast, and they can just forget about it, and they tend not to dwell on things, like adults can. So I try to keep them as busy as possible, with going and spending as much time with them as we could, getting out and about, getting out on the boat, going away, riding motorbikes, although Ryan was too young then at the time, but just getting, just not sitting at home and feeling sorry for ourselves.
Mm-hmm. So your boys are now young men. How proud of the two of them are you today?
Well, I'm very proud. They're 16 and 20 now. And but I'm most proud when other people tell me, what fine young men they've turned into. I get the biggest kick out of that, because that's to me is better than my own biased view, of them. And I've been told that many times, and I'm really humbled by that. I'm very proud of that, because I know that ultimately, Deb, would give her tick of approval on how they've turned out.
Mm-hmm. When you were younger, did you ever develop friendships considering the fact that you might come to rely on them so much in the future? For example, when you signed up to be the head physiotherapist at the Pennant Hills Demons, did you have any idea how important being part of a huge community might be later down the track?
Oh, absolutely not, because my motive to be involved with a club like Pennant Hills Football Club was to get more, to get exposure in sports physio field. I'd been involved in sports physio for a few years, but I was only sort of my third year out of working since graduating, and I'd helped with other clubs that I really wanted to get involved, sink my teeth into a club which I could sort of call, my own, as it were, and really, learn and grow from that, professionally. But what came out of it was much more than I ever realised back at the time.
Mm-hmm. As an everyday Joe Bag of Donuts, do you ever regret not having superhuman strength or resilience to help you through when Deb got sick, or has just being a good bloke been enough for you?
Well, I'm not sure about the good bloke bit, but I actually think that I did have a good amount of resilience there to help, and it's something that you never really know what you're capable of until you get, thrown in the deep end. And so a lot of people might think that they couldn't do this or couldn't do that, but ultimately they just don't know what they're capable of a lot of the time, and it's sometimes not until you're faced with some adversity that you then are able to find out what you can really accomplish.
Very well said. Greg Castle, I know you've got a 50th birthday to get to, so I'm going to let you go. But thank you, Greg, for joining us on Everyday Greatness. Thank you to the ARA Group for being our major sponsor. Thanks to Look Studio Australia for recording this podcast. And thank you all for listening. I hope that when you put your device down in a little while, you lift your head up, push your shoulders back, and walk down the street proud of being an everyday Joe Bag of Donuts. At Everyday Greatness, we're not trying to be something we're not. We're just trying to help people realise that being a real person is good enough. Everything you need to be the person you want to be is inside you right now. If you would like to have a chat or you have suggestions or comments, don't worry about getting in touch through the business channels. Give me a call, 0404 851 203. I hope you can join us next week when I'll be speaking to Paul Charles. Paul was a young fella when a handrail slide at a Bucks party went wrong. He had a stroke and was in a coma for 42 days. I hope you can join us to hear about Paul's journey through resilience to get back to the life he wanted to live. Thank you again for joining me, and I hope you can join us next week.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of Everyday Greatness, proudly brought to you by major sponsor ARA Group. If you'd like to stay up to date, check out our pages on Facebook and Instagram, or to listen to more episodes, go to everydaygreatness.com.au or wherever you get your podcasts.